You thought you knew Chad and Jolene. You thought you understood the sparks, the late nights, the impossible deadlines, and the raw chemistry that turned bad Chad customs into appointment television for millions. Every build felt like a shared victory, every setback part of a familiar rhythm between two people who seemed perfectly in sync. But what if everything you saw was only half the story? What if the woman standing beside Chad through every triumph and failure was quietly living an entirely separate life, one that neither fans, producers, nor even Chad himself fully understood? The Phoenix car build was meant to be their crowning achievement, the ultimate proof of years of partnership and creative trust. Fans celebrated. The industry took notice. Everyone assumed this was the peak of the bad Chad saga. What nobody realized was that this victory wasn't an ending at all. It was the quiet prelude to a revelation so profoundly human, it would shatter everything viewers thought they knew about this iconic duo. The truth didn't emerge through a dramatic on-camera confrontation or a carefully orchestrated press release. There were no swelling music cues or tense cliffhangers engineered for ratings. Instead, it arrived quietly and unexpectedly buried inside a late-night podcast interview almost no one was listening to. Just 15 seconds of audio uploaded to a small independent channel, grainy, unpolished, and unmistakably real. The voice was instantly recognizable, but it didn't sound like the Chad fans knew. Gone was the booming enthusiasm and infectious confidence. In its place was something fragile, restrained, and exhausted. Those 15 seconds were enough to ignite chaos across the entire bad Chad fanbase. People immediately asked why Chad was speaking to an obscure journalist instead of the major outlets that had followed his career for years. More importantly, they asked what could have driven him to speak so openly, without filters, without permission, and without a safety net. What made the moment devastating wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. His voice barely rose above a whisper, the sound of someone who had been carrying an unbearable weight for far too long. This wasn't promotional hype or manufactured drama. Even the show's producers were blindsided. Behind closed doors, panic spread as network executives realized their biggest star had just detonated a truth they didn't even know existed. The carefully controlled narrative they'd spent years building was suddenly out of their hands. As fans scrambled for answers, theories resurfaced, some old, some newly invented. For years, viewers had speculated about Jolene. Some believed she was secretly bankrolling the builds. Others imagined a mysterious past life or hidden temperament that cameras never captured. But as always, the theories missed the mark entirely. The truth wasn't scandalous in the way people expected. There was no affair, no illegal activity, no betrayal driven by ego or ambition. Instead, the reality was both simpler and far more complex. Jolene had been living two lives at once. Long before bad Chad customs ever existed, she had made a binding commitment to care for an elderly relative in her hometown, a responsibility that demanded constant attention, emotional endurance, and frequent emergency travel. This wasn't occasional check-ins or weekend visits. It was hands-on caregiving that required Jolene to disappear without warning, sometimes for days at a time. She was managing hospital visits, medical decisions, and moments of quiet crisis while simultaneously appearing on a high-energy reality show that demanded relentless presence and performance. Maintaining these parallel lives required an extraordinary level of compartmentalization, one that slowly drained her physically and emotionally. The secrecy wasn't rooted in shame, it was protection. Why hide something so compassionate? The answer lies in the reality television machine itself. Jolene understood that the moment she disclosed her situation, it would no longer belong to her. Contracts would allow cameras into hospital rooms, producers would turn medical emergencies into cliffhangers, and a vulnerable family member's dignity would be reduced to contempt. Faced with that reality, she made a choice. She chose exhaustion over exploitation. She chose silence over spectacle. She chose to risk her relationship and career rather than allow someone who couldn't consent to become entertainment. Once Chad's confession surfaced, fans began rewatching old episodes with new eyes, and the clues were everywhere. A generic rental car parked blocks away from the shop, unexplained production delays every few weeks, a 5-day pause during a major build that Chad angrily blamed on suppliers. In reality, that delay coincided with a medical emergency that required Jolene's immediate presence. Chad absorbed the criticism without knowing why. The most painful clues, however, weren't logistical, they were emotional. Jolene's distant stares during brainstorming sessions, Chad's uncharacteristic snaps followed by intense apologies. Moments once dismissed as normal tension now revealed cracks formed by an impossible situation. When the podcast clip went viral, it took less than 6 minutes for the hashtag to trend worldwide. The fan base fractured instantly. One side argued that secrecy, no matter how noble, was a betrayal of trust. The other defended Jolene's right to protect her family, praising her for choosing dignity over fame. As journalists rushed to cover the story, misinformation spread rapidly. Some outlets fabricated claims about hidden children, debt, or illegal behavior, turning a story about care and sacrifice into a tabloid circus. 2 days later, Jolene broke her silence, not through the network, but directly to her audience. Her statement was calm, precise, and unflinching. She didn't apologize. She explained. She detailed the years-long commitment she had made and the reasons it could never be integrated into the show. Most importantly, she made one thing clear. Given the same choice again, she would do it all the same way. She asked fans to stop attacking Chad and reminded them that the real victim of the media frenzy was the family member who never chose this exposure. Behind the scenes, the network spiraled. Filming was suspended. Lawyers searched contracts for violations. Executives debated how to turn a moral dilemma into marketable drama without appearing heartless. Jolene was reportedly offered a significant bonus in exchange for limited, sanitized access to her caregiving life. She refused without hesitation. The line she'd drawn remained firm. Now the future of Bad Chad Customs hangs in uncertainty. Without Jolene, the show is fundamentally different. Chad is adapting, building a team, learning to lead without the partner who once translated his vision into reality. Whether the partnership can survive personally or professionally remains unknown. What is certain is that this story has permanently changed how audiences view reality television. It exposed the cost of constant transparency and challenged the assumption that viewers are entitled to every detail of someone's life. Jolene's secret was never about deception. It was about integrity. In choosing care over cameras, she redefined commitment in a way few people ever see. And perhaps that's the most lasting legacy of all, not the cars, not the ratings, but a reminder that behind every public performance lies a private life deserving of protection.